Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of We Can Fight Like Cats If We Have to. Tonight is a little bit of a duet. We're missing Alon tonight, but we have the lovely Natasha as always, and we have the loudmouthed me as always. Eventful times these days. Both exhausted because, fighting racism is hard. And here we are still fighting racism because, it doesn't matter how much we do this. It appears it's still our fault and never the fault of the actual bigots. And so we're actually bringing, on that lovely note, we're kind of jumping into the topic of our shared experience. So I am not aware if our listeners are aware. Natasha is of Pakistani origin, immigrated here after she was married. She came as a Pakistani Muslim woman. Now she is not a conservative veiled woman, so she doesn't necessarily stick out in a crowd in terms of her religious views, although her appearance sticks out. And then I myself, I'm born and raised in Moncton, New Brunswick, to an Egyptian immigrant family, also Muslim background. And I had no idea what a Muslim was when I started to get assaulted. So let alone what a veil is or anything else. But we wanted to touch on the topic of Islam and Islamophobia. I mean, we touched a little bit on it after
the London attacks.
Yeah, after the attacks happened in London, after the entire family was essentially slaughtered for no reason, or so we think. We think that it was no reason, but when you investigate, you find out that there was a little bit of outspokenness in the Afzal family, apparently by the mother. Now, we're not sure necessarily to the tune of what kind, like whether it's as outspoken as we are or whether it's a lot more polite than we are, but
she was
apparently she was a writer. Apparently the mom was a writer, Mediha, and she did publications about being Muslim
in the GTA.
And we wonder if she pissed someone off, to be honest with you, because the truth is a life of activism is a life of danger, whether you like it or not. And to any of our listeners listening, Natasha and I were both pretty good drivers. We're both pretty responsible. We're happy being alive. We have no intention to commit suicide. Same thing with Alon. Same thing with our kids and our families. In my case, my husband. So if anything should happen to any of us, as listeners, don't assume that it's a coincidental accident. And it's kind of why we're talking about this here now, because we're starting to realize that maybe it's not so much a coincidence that they were executed in the way that they were executed. And no, go ahead.
No, I even when I heard about it the first time, I didn't know anything about the family's history, but it's very systematic. Like it's the whole family. Like it's rare that you'll have somebody who is impulsive and who manages to kill an entire family
with one car.
With one car. That is quite. I mean, it's. I mean, either this guy is fantastic.
Walking on the road.
Walking on the road, and another thing I found out was this was their nightly routine. Which was it was reported that this was their nightly routine, and that makes me wonder, because when you have a routine, then it's easy for someone to know that you have a routine. However, what really made me wonder was the fact when I read that this lady was a writer for many GTA publications and quite active. Now, I don't know what she was writing.
On her way to obtain her PhD, and my experience is many people with PhDs are liberal speakers and liberal thinkers in general. I think you have to be to pursue an academic career that far along. And I grew up in an academic family. My father was a professor. My sister is a professor. My brother-in-law is a professor. A lot of my family are professors. And so it would seem to me, and I worked with my father to accredit research for professors. So, you know, it's clear that professors tend to be free thinkers and free speakers. You
Universities
know,
encourage that.
exactly. I mean, you have the example, unfortunately, as well, of the opposite spectrum of the Rima Azar of pursuing Husoni Raymond and saying racism doesn't exist and tagging him publicly on Twitter. But, you know, going back to the Afzal family, you know, the finger is constantly being pointed at Islamophobia and white supremacy. And I do believe that it is Islamophobia and white supremacy. But I don't believe that it was that random.
No, I never.
I don't believe that it wasn't calculated. 3 generations completely wiped out like that during an evening walk. Not that I'm saying that white supremacists are not intelligent, but it sounds a little too well calculated. Like when you look at the Manassian in Toronto, the lunatic bus van driver, the incel. I mean, he's also white supremacist incel. You know, there was no actual calculation. Like he didn't hit one person and stop. Like he was really erratic, sporadic. They were clearly targets. And you know, Natasha and I just finished some training on Islamophobia. And for our listeners, you know, I'm not one to speak often about categorization of separating black, white, Islamophobia, homophobia. Like I don't categorize these things because fundamentally I believe categorizing these things puts the blame on the victim rather than on the bigot who is issuing the actual aggression. It separates the victims from each other, thinking that one is suffering more than the other or differently than the other, when in fact, you know, we should be quite united. It's really strange to me that we were in this training and they're talking almost exclusively of visibly targeted Muslims. So basically you're men with a beard who wear traditional Islamic attire.
Standing outside a mosque.
Women dressed in a veil, facial or just headdress veil. Hijab or niqab.
For listeners who don't know the difference, a hijab is a head covering, and it's a very specific head covering, and it's different from a niqab because that covers the lower portion of your face,
everything but the eyes,
with the exception of the eyes,
and sometimes covers the eyes. Some women will wear mesh on their eyes. And you know what? We're not here to debate whether this is cool, uncool, popular, unpopular, correct, incorrect, religious, non-religious, accurate, inaccurate. This is Canada, and most of the individuals that come here for the freedom, the promoted freedom of life choices.
Whatever they are.
And we say promoted because it's not actually the fact. There's a lot of social policy and social legal and social justice and social action that restricts a lot of immigrants from actually being who they want to be. And it's not necessarily because they want to be criminals. It's because if you're not white, you're not right. So Natasha and I are in this training. And again, for our listeners who don't see us in the videos, for those who watch us on YouTube, you can see us. For those who are listening to us, Natasha, you're not veiled, correct? There's no scarf on your head.
I never have been. Even in my home country, never was, with the exception of prayer times when you wear it for the prayers, which are a few minutes 5 times a day.
Bingo. I sport a power puff and really don't talk religion because I don't like to bring attention to those things. I don't like, I don't feel it's anybody's business. And again, like when I started being attacked for being a Muslim, it wasn't even because I was Muslim, it was because I was visibly different. And I honestly, they spoke about secular Islamophobia. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, I even intervened at one point in one of my group chats because they would divide us from the training into smaller groups. We would have the conversation. I said,
Breakout
I've
session.
never seen Islamophobia that wasn't secular unless in the case of a convert. Um, because if you're going to say that it has to be secular Islamophobia, that means that every woman who is practicing or non-practicing or has that identity of Islamic faith has a magic stamp on our head, and um we don't necessarily wear a veil, and it I find belittles the Islamophobia faced by women and men who are not visibly
Overtly
Muslim.
religious, overtly have
Yeah.
any signs of overt religiosity, like a beard or like wearing a headscarf or an abaya. You know, if you're not wearing those things, then you're not displaying it. And yet, you know, and yet, there is still that reflex, you know, response to people. And I've had people aggressively like accost me in places and aggressively question me, complete total strangers, about where I'm from. This is not normal. I mean, you don't do that without a reason. And it's not only myself, but my children who were in school are having this happen when they're 5, 6, 7 years old. And again, this is not on the kids because they're obviously being prompted by their, you know, bigoted parents to do that. So this is not about. I find the very slanted focus in the media and in even in, you know, research and all activists to focus very heavily on Islamophobic incidents that are directed at people who are very visibly Muslim. You'll always have this woman. The story will start with this woman was attacked and her hijab was pulled off, and it will typically center around the hijab. Now, I know the hijab is a great irritation for a lot of people.
Makes you
Uh,
a target, yes, but
it absolutely
they would have
does.
found something else to make you a target, to be very
Exactly.
honest with you. Like I don't buy that, because again, I was attacked the first time when I was 7 years old. I didn't
And
even know what a Muslim was, even though I was Muslim. Like really, it doesn't make
it,
sense.
it's just no, and I find the very, very selective focus. Like they always have stories about dude was coming out of mosque and, you know, heard slurs or somebody threw something at him. And I absolutely believe this stuff happens, but that is not limited. That is not the whole experience right there. Because what's happening when you focus on people who are only overtly, you know, have these signs of being Muslim, you are taking away the attention off the person who is committing the act of
Bingo.
bigotry and putting the focus on this other person who is not, as I we heard it frequently, not looking Canadian. Okay.
And not
Or
looking for attention, quite frankly.
and not looking for attention.
Like really, like here's the thing, this family was walking minding their own damn business.
They were
They did
doing their
not want to be on national news. They were taking a family walk minding their own damn business. Why are we making this about the family that was walking rather than the lunatic who was driving the car?
because if you do that,
It's easier to make it about the victim, because then you don't have to take accountability. It's, you know, they're being racialized and discriminated against because they're black, because they're Muslim, because they're
because they were
Asian.
wearing
The
traditional clothes,
fact is, they're being
all of those things.
discriminated against because they're not white, and they don't, either can't be white or don't want to be white. And the reason why I say can't be and don't want to be is because you have people that
Yeah.
cannot look white, like Natasha. You're fair skinned, but you cannot look
No.
white. Take a flat iron to my hair, pretty sure I look white. Like I have a lot of indigenous African traits, but if you don't know what an indigenous African looks like, and you see the color of my skin where the melanin was sucked out by my second child, you would
I don't
just think I'm another white woman. Like, yeah, by the way, for people who don't realize this, your children suck out your melanin and you get lighter with the children. Others, it's the opposite. But anyway, that's a whole other topic of discussion. But I don't want to straighten my hair. I don't want to be white. I don't want to fit in that. I've never wanted to fit in a cookie cutter pattern. And it wasn't even because I wanted attention. It was because I just wanted to be left the hell alone to be whoever I wanted to be. And it's not my responsibility to fell the entertainment of, all these people who want to read about victims. It's not the story of the victim that needs to be heard. It's the story of the abuser that needs to be told. Because at this point, I think we've heard enough victims and our victim statements and our victim history and our victim abuse. We don't need to hear these stories. I mean, we should hear these stories, but more importantly is we need to hear about the abusers, the people committing the atrocity, because until we start talking about those things, we're not breaking the cycle. We're not breaking the pattern. We're not stopping the risk of this happening again. It's just going to keep happening. And, saying it in your head, well, you don't want to get assaulted, just don't wear a veil. I was 7. I was 7 the first time I was verbally, psychologically, physically assaulted. Hair set on fire, petitions made by parents that didn't want me around their kids who are Catholic. I was 7. And when you're 7, doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Buddhist, Catholic. Do you know what you know when you're 7? You're a potato when you're 7. You know that you're 7. You know that you're a kid and that you're a potato. And it really doesn't make sense. So really this argument that you have to knowingly make the choice of whatever faith or clothing or whatever it is, no, that's not the case. This is white people choosing to hate. And that is the actual problem in this situation. And I want to, clarify one thing. I've had comments made and people state and comment even on one of our YouTube videos and things like that I'm very anti-white. No, I'm not very anti-white. I'm very anti-hateful white people. I'm very anti-privileged white people. I'm very anti fragile, sensitive white people who can't handle, us calling out the flaws in their nature. And, the reason why we have to put those words in front of the continuation of white people is because you have to explain this. And it was like Alon said it in one of our previous episodes, like people of color don't get to just try and fit in. We don't get to. But white people get the pass when they try. No. You don't get a pass. You have to actually perform. You actually have to take your fragility, put it in a toilet, which many white people have. You need to flush. And if that thing is too big of a poop to get flushed down the toilet and clogs your pipe, get the damn dirty plunger and do the dirty job of shoving it the hell down the pipe and get rid of that shit so we don't have to deal with your fragile, ignorant inadequacies anymore. And that's for anybody who wants to say I'm being bigoted against, white people. No, I'm not being bigoted against white people. I'm being bigoted against bigoted white people. That's what I'm being bigoted against. And I'm also bigoted against anybody who's a bigot, by the way, because there are people of other origins who are bigoted. You're muted, Nat. There are people of other origins who are bigoted, in fact. And when you call them out, they usually will either cowered away and change their way out of cowardice or out of knowledge, oh, I've been told differently, I'm opening my eyes. But it seems to me in my life experience that when you call out a bigoted white person, they're allowed to defend themselves, and that needs to be stopped.
Not only do they defend themselves, but you'll have like a whole bunch of people defending them as well. It's not like they're alone. And I think that the power of numbers, I think, really plays into it, right? It's
Yep.
the fact that they know that they'll have like thousands of people like jumping to their defense. That absolutely plays into why they do what they do. But getting back to the whole being Muslim who's not who's not overtly Muslim. I think it's very, very strategic that there is no attention called towards hate crimes and, lesser behaviors that don't meet the standard for a hate crime, and we'll get to that in a minute, but that are committed towards people and children, because a lot of children are not overtly Muslim, and it's
All children are not overtly Muslims. They're potatoes.
but I mean, like, they're not little kids are not wearing hijabs and beards, they're not. So how come, people aggressively go after them as the way they aggressively went after you? And it is because there is a reluctance on the part of this community and the part of the media to not want to draw attention to the fact that you don't have to be an Orthodox Muslim in order to have people hate you, because the hatred is generally very broad based, very paranoid, and there is a tendency to want to ghettoize the entire community. And this has been done before. We've seen it before. It's been done with First Nations, it's been done with the Black community, it is being done with the Muslim community. And the intention is the same. And at this point, you start to wonder, with the First Nations, it was actually to basically kill off the entire population
With the children, starting with the children.
Along with the children, and starting
with the children.
Exactly. And that really hasn't ended. And I think that's also something that people don't like to talk about. But the fact that there is this huge number of First Nations children in care, or that's what they call it in the foster care system, that is another attempt to, take them away and, turn them against
Canadianize them.
Turn them against their communities and basically, eradicate their lineage. So this, I think, if the same practices, it's like they are just being tried on this community as well. And you're not, you're not safer if you are visibly more secular. You're not safer, because that is not true. You are still seen as a problem. And I keep reading, I've seen on so many forums after these attacks, which you'd think would put the fear of God into people, but no, we need to get rid of this Muslim problem. Okay, when I read, we need to get rid, and I think we reported one of those people. I think.
No, I actually called the cops on this one, but yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to get rid of this Muslim problem from Canada. When I read that, I'm reading, what do you mean when you're saying that? What do you mean get rid of? Because that can really be a call to action.
It is a call to action. It can't be a call. It is a call. We need to get rid of. That is not a potential call. That is an actual call to action. That is what Bisonette and Manassian and all these other Fruit Loops, this is what they all do. This is what all these lunatics do. It's not a call to action. They all want to be a hero. You have a lot of those in New Brunswick.
Oh yeah.
The reason why we don't have white supremacist organizations in New Brunswick is because the white supremacy is so culturally embedded within our culture as New Brunswickers.
Yes.
We don't need a white supremacy organization, because we are a white supremacist province.
Yeah,
we are a white supremacist province where white supremacy is taking over our courts, taking over our legal system, taking over our criminal system, taking over our education system. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Cardi. Taking over everything, like taking over
everywhere,
every single
facet of your life, every single facet. And it's absolutely right, because if the whole province, with very small exceptions, is heavily far right, you don't need to have far right organizations, because everyone caters to the far right, and is or either deeply impressed with the far right, or is at best not willing to challenge the far right.
I don't believe that. I think the not willing to challenge is a very small population here in New Brunswick.
That's what I mean. Not willing. Yeah.
I think the too cool to challenge is also another small percentage of the population. I think that many people who pretend they're too cool or not willing actually agree with the white supremacist movement. And then we're talking about, so in this training, they also talked about, you know, your rights and what is actually law and what can you call police on and stuff like that. And I'm like, they're like, okay, you can call the police if this happens. And I'm like, well, did it? And they told me exactly what you're saying, which is there's not a crime. We can't prove anything. What is the point?
What is the
What is the point having these laws? What is the point having police force? And you know, you said, Natasha, earlier that there were no hate crimes reported in New Brunswick.
No, when they were showing the statistics for hate crimes reported in Canada and whatever year they were showing them, it was 0 for New Brunswick. Police reported hate crimes, and there was 0 for New Brunswick. I can tell you, in that year alone, I must have dealt with at least 100. And then the question is, why aren't you reporting them? Well, I kind of did, but I didn't report it officially because I had been down that road of reporting official stuff. And what I would see each time is making excuses for the person. Being told, we know this person. They're very nice, and you're
just lock your doors if you're really that worried.
No, I also got your husband is wealthy, and you should get your own security guard if you're this worried. So I'm thinking, okay, sure. So you get all the excuses, starting from you're mistaken, we know this person, all the way down to actually collaborating with the person, which has happened. You know, when I would see this person turn around and make friends with the person, at that point you are so traumatized that you're thinking, I'm not going down this road again. And at this point, I would only speak to an officer if I previously knew that officer. And I knew they're not going to turn around and make friends with that person.
Even if you knew, it doesn't matter. We thought we knew the business community of Moncton. We didn't know they were all damn criminals that cover up the crimes of white supremacists and abuses. And we thought we knew that we could contact our representative in the federal government to file a complaint. We didn't think that her friendship would be an issue with some of the people involved in the organization. Like, you know, you think you know. You think you know, but you don't know. You think you know you're safe. You think you know you can talk to the police. You think you know you can report to these organizations that say, oh, we will take care of you when you will report it. And you know what? After what happened with our business, and I really saw how full of shit our legal system is in New Brunswick and in Canada. To be very frank, it is a big fat joke. It's no different than what's in the Middle East or any quote unquote third world dictatorship country. What I observed was exactly the same thing. The only difference was, in the third world country and dictatorship country, they're less quote unquote polite about it.
They're obvious about it. Here it's very polite. It's everything. Nobody's going to admit anything, which is even more of a mindfuck, because at that point,
beat around the bush.
You know, it's and I think when, like, we had this conflict with this individual a few weeks ago, and I think you had asked me, you know, because there were obvious threats that were made, and you had said, we need to, you know, this needs to be documented, which is the obvious thing, because you need to document threats in case there's escalation. And I had been through that road so many times with people making, you know, threats or behaving threateningly. And at this point, I'm thinking, what if I report to this person and they happen to turn out to be this person's friend, or they know them, or they just like them because they're white, you know? And at this point, I'm thinking,
or what security are they going to give me from this person who carries around a machete conveniently in the back of their car? Like, actually, like, what security am I going to be provided from this individual?
Okay, I did not know about the machete.
Frag. For our listeners, we were just involved in a situation of a psychopath, you know, who made threats, and it was someone who used to be in our circle of friends. And anyway, the threat to follow through ratio is so far at like 90%. And again, you have the white supremacism popping out of this person. You have the hero mentality popping out of this person, where, you know, they're going to not just do a call for action, but take action
Yep.
for all mankind. And this is what white supremacists think they're
Yep.
doing,
Yep.
is they think that they're taking an action for all mankind. And like, here we are in this situation. Like in my case, I did actually call and report this person, and I'm still waiting to hear my follow up back, sorry, from the RCMP regarding my call of a complaint. And this was before the clarification that this individual was randomly carrying around a machete and has used the machete to chase someone. And that's great that that person managed to outrun this individual with the machete. And whether that person was, doing the wrong thing and deserved to be chased with a machete is a whole other topic. It's the fact that this person is willing to take social justice into their own hands, because that is what white supremacists do. And I want to go on another tangent that really bothered me from the training that we had today, is that nowhere in that training did I feel represented. And, just like with the Black Lives Matter movement, when it first started, my story before being known was dismissed, before the grotesque extent of my story was dismissed from the get-go. Like, no, you're too light. There's no way you suffered anything. Oh, were you called names? Oh, were you bullied? And then as that onion peeled, and the layers of having your hair set on fire, teachers abusing you, children beating you in front of hundreds of people with no action, permanent injuries physically and psychologically, literally not being able to properly perform at school at one point because you're too busy hiding in the bathroom trying not to die. Yep. Or you can't focus on your material because you're too busy getting threatening whispers from the person in the seat behind you in class. Everybody's talking and they're like, no, chick, you're way too late. Hey, light skin, you ain't experienced shit, right? And they don't get it. And this is the same thing for, the Muslims out there who are thinking, Islamophobia is to be most feared if you are a veiled Muslim. No, you know what? Islamophobia is to be most feared when you are alone and you have no place to turn to. And when you say that the main target of Islamophobia is going to be veiled women and men who go to mosques, you are in fact isolating the more secular community and giving them less space, less safe space to hide. Exactly. And you need to open your doors up and say, we may be the most visible, but we are actually not the most vulnerable. And you know what? She did say it at one point. She did say that LGBTQ Muslims are more vulnerable than standard Muslims. Yeah, and dark-skinned Muslims are more vulnerable than other Muslims, and African Muslims are more vulnerable because of their visibility and their minority status. And the fact that it's harder to balance the two identities. Yeah, I guess you have to choose one. Just like she said, you have to check mark which one you're getting assaulted over when you go to a police station to make a report. But it's the isolation that makes you an easy target. That isolation that, you cannot depend on anybody. You have no safe community that can circle you. And we are community species. We are community creatures. We are creatures that belong within a society, within a family. And when you say like, no, my experience makes me more at risk than you, what it says to me is you really have no idea what the risk is. Exactly. And you're going to put all your attention on protecting those who to you are deemed the most vulnerable. Creating a whole other category of vulnerable people, like your 7-year-old kid in a classroom who is the only Muslim sitting out the catechism class and making themselves a visible target when a parent came to pick up their other child for dental work and noticed during catechism class that this one child is sitting in the corner doing math homework. You're completely neglecting that isolation. You're and this was in the 90s. For those of us who want to think that, catechism was in class, not, decades and decades ago. I grew up in the 90s, people. It was still there.
Yeah.
That isolation was still there, that religion in the school system was still there. And am I saying that if you have a Catholic school, you shouldn't have catechism? No, but I'm saying there's no place for it in a public
None.
funded school that is, you know, secular,
Or no
religion
religion.
free. Like I don't
No mention of religion
understand.
in any
I
school.
don't understand why that has to be in school.
It
it,
does
it
not.
it does not.
Absolutely does
And
not.
this applies, like, shove a fork up my nose, but to me this applies to any public school. I don't think
Any public
religious
school.
affiliation should be in the school system, because then education is no longer accessible to all the children. It is
It's
only
compromised.
accessible to the welcomed children who fit within the cliche clique that you feel should be in that school. And so back to the concept, like, underrepresentation. Nobody mentioned the fact that the Afzal family was not a visible
Yes,
Muslim family. They were
exactly.
a visible minority family,
But they were not
but they were
visible.
not a visibly Muslim family. They
Mhm.
were not on their way to or from a mosque.
Nope.
None of them are veiled,
Doing a secular activity.
doing a secular activity.
And
There
yet,
is no reason.
yep.
There is no reason why we should say right off the get-go that, you know, Islamophobia, the most vulnerable are those who are most visibly Muslim,
Because
or
that's
the
not what
most
happened.
visibly visible. No, it's the most visibly isolated.
It's the
I
most, and
That's
I
where I
would
really
argue,
disagree on that training. Is it really is the most
no, but
visibly isolated
it's not
within
even
that
that
community.
training. It's across the board. Every newspaper article,
Yeah.
every statement that's released by multicultural agencies or provincial governments or whoever wants to say, "Oh, I'm a friend to Muslims," will always talk about the hijab and people going to mosques. They will never talk about the fact that women who are dressing in a secular way, who are not overtly religious, whose children are not overtly religious, and who's the men in their family who are not either. Those men are typically blackmailed in the workplace. That's the typical go-to. And with women, it's
Yes.
street harassment. I was afraid to walk in my neighborhood for years and years because there were absolutely bigoted people on every corner who would make a point of trying to intimidate me with their dogs. And when I would complain about it, I would get, well, it's their neighborhood and they can stand outside with their dogs. But I know when somebody's being intimidated. And this
Are you
has,
sure, Natasha?
yeah, I'm not sure
You
exactly.
sure you're not coming from a foreign country and you're just
I'm
jaded?
just
Because
afraid.
apparently we're all delusional, even the ones born here, like myself.
No, and we don't understand that, people can just be hanging out with their dogs. The point is
With a
that
machete.
and there are people with machetes. Okay, I did not know about the machete until yesterday, or I would have thought that was definitely.
Dude, if
Did you
I
mention?
was caught with a machete in the back of my
Oh my
car
God, I
and
can't even.
openly admitted that I
Oh,
chased someone with my machete,
with a
the
machete.
Muhammad
Oh
in
my
my middle
God.
name would have sent me straight to a
But it's okay.
rejuvenated, reinstated Guantanamo Bay that they would have reopened
But
just for my quote unquote terrorist acts.
no, but this is the point, that this is a white woman, okay? And she's a white woman. She gets away with having a machete. She gets away with chasing a person with a machete.
After a high speed car chase.
Just like in shock. So that's why I say that, it doesn't matter what the perpetrator is doing and what we're doing, because they're white, and New Brunswick, you get away with anything. You
In
get away
Canada, you get away with anything.
I
and
can't
and we have
Canada.
to
I only lived in
justify
Brunswick.
why the person was a victim. That's
Yeah.
my other thing, is we have to justify. And it's the same thing like with rape, we have to justify, what were you wearing? Well, what was their religion? Who the fuck cares? Who the fuck cares? You should
Because they
fucking
have to
care that
turn
a
around.
family 3 generations in got murdered. Like, that makes me so mad. I'm gyrating. I'm angry. Like, why is this
Whatever.
even a topic of discussion? Why are we talking about Islamophobia? Why are we talking about homophobia? Well, no, they're not getting attacked because they are a visible minority of some sort. No, they are getting attacked because the person attacking them is a bigot piece of shit that needs to have something done about them.
No, but the problem is that until a couple of years ago, they were not, CSIS was not even investigating the far right. They were
Are
not.
they really?
No,
Are they
apparently now
even
they
now?
are. Apparently they are now. I don't know. That's what
Are
the
they?
report said.
Are they?
I'm hoping, but let's see. But the point is,
What?
before
How are they investigating if there are reports of no hate crimes in
no,
New
but
Brunswick?
that's New Brunswick. New Brunswick is special, and there
Yeah, but
are.
this is the data that is sent to CSIS. CSIS isn't psychic. They're not psychic. They look at the data that they receive from
And they
other
believe.
policing authorities, and then they view that and they based on that they decide what is,
Well,
a
so
priority in terms of the terrorism or in the blah 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 blah
at
blah.
this point,
So zero hate crimes, New
no, but those
Brunswick.
are obviously
Zero hate crimes, New
in New
Brunswick. Are you
Brunswick.
kidding me?
Yeah,
Are you kidding me? I
zero.
want to know who's the delusional police force head who reported this and wasn't like, I'm going to look like a complete fucktard writing the number 0 down. And I'm not even going to be intelligent enough to fabricate a number to pretend like we actually listened to something last year. I'm going to be so stupid that I'm just going to write down the 0 and believe that we had 0 cases. Like, really, like, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, actually, I'm really not sorry. I'm going to take back that sorry. I am not sorry. You are a delusional. If you wrote it down because you were told to write it down, you should have resigned your job because they made you look stupid. They made you look fucking stupid. Like,
but
I'm
Sally,
sorry.
it gets worse, right? It gets worse because it's not one police chief. There's 13 municipal forces.
But one of them had to write it down and submit it to like
I don't think
the
there's
government
one.
of Canada.
No, I
Like,
don't think there's one in charge.
somebody.
What I mean is there were 13 municipal chiefs, and then there's the head of the RCMP in New Brunswick. So that is like 14 people at least, all of whom sent data to whoever the central.
No, they sent no data because no data existed.
Yeah, so they all sent the 0 number to the central reporting agency. So at some point, I don't know if they spoke to each other or they just all said we have 0 statistics, and they did not realize how fake that looks.
And I want to go even further and say,
my
who
God.
on a national federal level saw
It
that
is
0
embarrassing. I'm sorry. This
and
is
wasn't like, the fuck they talking about? Are they delusional? It's kind of like saying, I'm going to leave a bag of candy right here open in front of this 2-year-old. And when I come back and this 2-year-old with chocolate smeared all over their face said they didn't eat a single one,
Yep.
that I'm going to believe that 2-year-old. This is what the person reading and further reporting that report without being like, dog, you kidding, right? Like, that's a bullshit. You fabricate. You either pooped that number out, or your 3-year-old is learning to write the letter O or the number 0, and you gave me the wrong piece of paperwork.
Well,
like,
so
something doesn't make sense here.
I think one person brought this up with the local force here and said, how could you report 0 and not realize that that's impossible? And this person said to this woman that that is because the bar for hate crimes is significantly high. So there may have been
It's
cases
not.
reported, but they just did not meet that criteria.
Legally, it's not high.
And that's just it. I
It's
didn't
the
know that.
fucktard receiving the complaint who decides whether or not that complaint is worthy. It's not the complaint that's inadequate. And for all our listeners that are listening out of province, or any listeners who may be listening that have any kind of authority or influence or ability to investigate
A lawyer
or whatever,
or somebody,
let me make something perfectly clear. When you are in New Brunswick and we had a massive hate situation, the one that Natasha referred to earlier, where a man on Facebook did a call to action saying we need to get rid of this problem of Muslim people, essentially was what was said. And the rhetoric was so disgusting, and it was so close to what was done to the London family, the officer family. Like, it was so, like, I could not sleep.
Yeah, it was
the next day. I called the No, I called the
I think it's
RCMP
called,
here in New Brunswick, and they're
yeah, and
like,
they
well, no,
directed
they
you.
didn't break any laws. They didn't commit any crimes. Call the Ontario division. They're like, that's a
They
fucking hate
committed a crime.
crime.
Exactly.
That's a fucking hate crime.
You
Like
can't
we're
say
on this. You
get rid of
can't
the Muslim
say
problem in
that.
Canada. What does that mean? That means
Can't say that.
that is a call to genocide, and that is, I'm sorry, and then they're gonna get, well, but they don't do that. Well, I'm sorry, it's been done before, so why wouldn't you think you could do it again? You've already done it once.
We
Uh,
always like to say Hitler was
oh,
like the first one to really create
oh no, no,
genocide. And
no,
that's
no,
how he
no.
started it. For anybody who has Netflix, there's a show called, I think, How to Become a Tyrant or something like that. When I find it out, I will put it in the comments, or I'll put it, in the link of this video. Um, it's a show that basically gives you the textbook steps of how to become a tyrant using real life examples. And Hitler started off as just a random white guy saying, we need to get rid of the Jews problem,
The Jewish problem,
the
exactly.
Jews problem. Like
And
it
same
was,
words. And
yeah,
another
like,
thing,
no, but
another
Jews
thing,
is, I think, a little bit more condescending and racially demeaning. And
mm-hmm,
from the get-go, he came in with the confidence to use that demeaning term
yep,
on a stage where, by the way, he was actually hired as a private investigator to break down anti-Semitic behavior, and actually ended up being the leader. So to say that these people do not infiltrate our safety and security systems is a complete lie. I really invite you to
of
really
course they
learn the
do.
story of Adolf Hitler.
Oh,
And anybody really, Muammar Gaddafi, like anybody who was a tyrant,
Stalin,
Stalin, all of them. Stalin was another one featured in
Napoleon, yep, yep.
the Kim
What's his name?
John. I
Kim
hate
and
him so much I can't even. I blocked out his whole
are you
family's
talking about
name.
Kim Jong? What's his name?
Kim Jong Un or Kim Jong. I never know which one's the dad, which one's the son. No, I am educated, but I
Chairman
just
Mao.
I can't. I just can't stand him enough to actually memorize what his
Oh,
name
there's
is,
he's
because
a
arrogance that high really irritates me. And you know what? That's kind of like the white supremacist movement right
in
there. It is that arrogance, right?
that arrogance.
So we can't point at foreign countries and say, well, it's call it genocide there, but when it happens in our own
It's
backyard,
not.
we
Yeah.
just sit there idle. Like there's so many layers to this conversation. There's the sitting there idle and doing jack shit when there's complaints made in New Brunswick against people
Mhm.
who are going to hurt us.
Absolutely.
We're
That
not
is the
stupid. We've
intention.
seen this. I've
That is
seen
the
it since I'm
intention.
7 years old.
Oh, I see it every
I
day.
identify this right away. And it is not a phobia. When someone says, I'm going to come to your business and rip out your crotch, I assume that they are going to come to my business and rip out my crotch, because Lord forbid I don't assume that and go to work. My children might not have a mother.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is not something you say, not as a joke, not as a anything. And when it is made as a demeaning threat, especially when we are people of color, and you know that you're going to get away with saying it. Like it's just, that's the one layer. The second layer is the isolation from the far right organization of our own kind.
Yeah.
Again, when Muslim sisters and brothers go to other Muslim sisters and brothers and say that, no, you are not at risk, I'm the one who's at risk,
Because
and
I'm
therefore you isolate
Muslim.
this person who you say is not at risk by protecting only the people claiming that they need the protection.
Yeah.
That was a whole other thing. And then they were talking about the phenomenon of when there's more people there, uh why people are less likely to react. What was it called? The bystander? No, not the
Bystander effect. The
the
bystander effect. Yeah, that's
yeah,
been studied.
or the
But I think
community
that's
effect or whatever it's called.
called the bystander effect, and I've heard about it in other presentations on
And
how.
it's true. I mean, I was assaulted in front of hundreds of individuals, and
Yeah.
the professionals responsible to take care of me did jack shitley squat, until I was already assaulted on the ground and the ambulance was on its way, essentially. But like at one point they're talking in the seminar and they're talking about, the things you can do as a bystander. And they say, even if after the person has been assaulted, you go there and check to see if they're okay. Okay, I'm speaking as a parent right now. If my child is at school
Yeah.
and you sat there and watched them get assaulted, please go fuck yourself before you go and ask them how they're doing. I don't want you within 10 feet of my child. I don't care if you saw them get hurt and then you want to go up to them after the fact and be like, are you okay? No, no, I'm sorry. Go fuck yourself. You're too little, too late. They don't need your protection. They've got more balls than you do. And don't try to get a hero sticker. That was
So
one thing I greatly disagreed with in the seminar. You can do a million things as a
no,
bystander. I mean,
have
one time I was being chased by a weird man on Main Street when I was in my early 20s, didn't know what the hell was going on. He was intoxicated. A bunch of like 14-year-olds grabbed me, and the kid was like, "Hey, big sister," like a freaking 14-year-old knew to grab me and be like, "Hey, big sister," didn't know this guy from a hole in the wall, but saw me running through Main Street
that's
from
so
like some dude,
sweet.
which by the way, I had passed a shit ton of adults before I hit this crew of teenagers, where this one kid grabbed me over and was like, "Hey, sis, come hang out with us. It's great. I was waiting
Oh,
for you. You're 20 minutes late." Da, 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 da. And
sweetheart.
eventually that person walked away. Um, yeah, that's something you can do.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes. Acknowledge the person's existence, because
Acknowledge
if
them.
they feel like they
They're
are
not alone.
missed, they're not going to,
Yeah,
if the perpetrator, if the aggressor realizes that the victim will be missed if something happens to them,
it,
they're not going to do it because
exactly.
they know they're going to get
No,
noticed. So when you're doing this whole
exactly.
division thing of I'm veiled, therefore I'm more at risk,
Yeah,
and you're
we need to
separating the
stop that
others
shit
and
right now.
saying that they like, this needs to stop, man. This blacker
No,
skin,
but
this
no, no, but
I
it's
look
been
like
done.
this, I sound like this, I have an accent, I have, stop it. We're all in the same, I'm talking about all the minorities are in this together,
Together.
and we need to stop this division. Like,
Yeah.
this course
I'm more
was
black than you.
perfect
I'm more whatever veiled than you.
minus
This needs
the
to
title.
stop right now because every single one of us who is not like white to the whitest degree is in danger in some way, in some space. And until we stop that, we're always going to have to curtail our movements, our decisions, our children's movements. We're not living full lives and we're scared all the time. This is ridiculous. And I would say that this, what's it called? This focus on the very visibly orthodox people is not just, it's not just done by, our communities, but also by, the Canadian white community, because they then can remove all responsibility from them. Then all the responsibility becomes the fault. Of course, they're going to say it's not their fault and we shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But then it becomes the fault of the veiled person and the person who's coming outside from a mosque with a beard. Then you can blame them, even if you're saying, well, we're not, that they have a right to do that. That's all those, sanctimonious statements that they make. But the fact is, by drawing attention to those things and refusing to acknowledge the people and selectively covering up the stories of the people who are not visibly orthodox, it's very selective, because I tried to get attention. I was like, this, people need to know that you don't have to be orthodox to be targeted. I could not get one journalist in the whole city to touch the story
And
because
you
they kept
still
saying,
can't.
no,
I'm
they would,
telling you right now, the only journalists that are going to touch your story are us.
they're not going to touch it, because the moment they touch it, it becomes their fault. It can't be their fault. It always has to be your fault. You're the minority, it has to be your fault. And this is where we need to have an action plan at this point, because you can't depend on the agencies to protect you. You can't depend on the media to do its fucking job. So what happens at this point? You have to start making your own resources, like we did, because we know we can't get CBC to report anything that doesn't makes the local community look bad. So what do you do as far as when it comes to your safety? I think we need to talk about safety, because um, we all know that we're not protected, because if there's white women with machetes who go around, threatening
Taking
people,
legal matters into their own hands.
and that's okay, but we can't get protection from them. So it's what do you do, and how do we protect ourselves, and how do we protect each other? And at this point, I'm thinking, maybe we need to have some sort of, I don't know, because how we can't get representation in the forces. So what do you do? Like, how do you
We can't
protect?
get representation in anything. We can't even freaking get elected
No,
because
well,
no white
election is
person is
not
going
going
to
to help.
vote for a person of color.
No, it doesn't matter.
It's
It doesn't
not going to
matter who you're
happen. I mean,
qualified.
oh, we want to talk about Shippigan that got their first black
No, I don't
mayor.
want to talk about that, dude.
Please, please,
Don't.
please. They
I
want a
can't.
sticker for electing a man with black skin. Yes, this is a big day, but like he also had to really infiltrate the community.
Yes, and
And
he
I'm
did
pretty
not
sure there are
talk about
things that
being.
he did that maybe he felt and maybe he didn't feel he had to do for to be able to gain those votes. And frankly, maybe he's more diplomatic than we are.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't be, I'm sorry,
No,
after
nothing. No, no,
after
no.
35 years of being diplomatic, my diplomacy is gone.
Yep,
It is
same.
not just gone. There have been like warning signs.
Eradicated.
It's like
Eradicated.
it's gone. Like, like when a bridge starts to fall apart, you can fix it, right? But
No.
then you get to a point where you know what, it's a lost cause, and eventually that bridge is going to collapse. Well, that bridge to my diplomacy,
Hmm.
it's gone. Like some fish are building some homes in there now in the ocean. Like it's not coming back. It's not coming back because I tried. I tried and I am exhausted. And
Good
another
cry.
danger that that I really need to press isn't just that it's going to bring attention, that it has to be, the veiled individuals that are going to be, attacked, and it's your fault for being veiled. It creates a vulnerable category of people who have nowhere to turn for protection because they are too white to be black and too black to be white. And I don't mean in racial colors, I mean in their position on whatever they are, or in their racial color.
Oh no, and
I'm
I
too
would.
white to be black and too black to be white. And that has been made infinitely clear for me from a very young age.
Yeah. No, I think what the term I was told was, you are too Muslim for our community, but you're not Muslim enough for the Muslim
Muslim
community
community. Yep.
to protect you because you
To
have to be.
protect you. That's what I
Yeah,
mean.
exactly.
So we're
So
not even denying
no, and this is
that
a
the threat
lawyer.
is there.
This is a lawyer I asked to help me because I said I can't get anyone to do anything about these hate crimes. And this lawyer, who by the way is apparently an acclaimed lawyer, said, "Well, it's kind of hard for you, huh? Since you're too Muslim for, our community." And he's being very matter of fact. And I was like, "Okay, well, thank you for
Well, that
stating the
is the matter of
problem.
fact.
Thank you for stating it. Now, what is your solution? I'm assuming you
He's a
have a
lawyer. He's
solution."
not a
Uh,
policymaker.
no,
And
so what he
he's clearly not someone who wants to change the status quo.
course not, because why would he change the status quo? So his solution was, well, I think you need to make a decision, and I said, what kind of decision? He's like, well, given that you're not really orthodox, like, would it cost too much for you to just sort of just say that I don't practice anymore? I was like, are you like fucking seriously at this point? So
Would it cost that much to just like cut off my nose and tell people I have no intention of smelling anymore?
I'm thinking, are you seriously? Did you ask me that? And and I got an even
He
better
did.
piece of
He asked
advice
you that.
from the victim service counselor, who I would go to and I'd cry and I'd say, why is nobody helping me? And she said, listen, you're not going to get any help from us, from because we can't. And she wouldn't tell me why. And then she said, why don't you pretend to be Orthodox? I was like, "Are you serious?" I'm
Yeah.
thinking this woman who works for, a government agency as a victim service counselor is telling me to pretend to be more orthodox because she said we can't help you and maybe they can.
Well, they can if you want to pretend to be something you're not. You were talking
Wow.
earlier that you're constantly afraid,
Oh
and you
my
can't live
god.
your life because you're constantly afraid. I
Oh
am
my
no longer
god.
afraid, but I'm very well
No, I
aware that
couldn't
any
believe after that.
second could be my demise.
Yeah.
This is the reality that I now face because, my filter
Mhm.
is gone along with my sanity, which
Mhm.
everything was taken away from me. Because for people,
Your sanity is just fine.
if you are listening, like, know that, I was not always this outspoken. I was not always this verbal. I was a really, really quiet individual. I was a really
So was
yes,
I.
ma'am
So
woman
was I.
for such a long time. I, oh my gosh, the things I did for people who did not give a shit about my safety and my identity and my freedom. You know, you think that you give, and you're going to get back. And then you realize you don't.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big thing as parents is that you realize you don't get these things back. And, we all want to teach our children to be better than we were.
Yeah.
And we are.
Mhm.
And at this point, I can't teach my children to be better than I am if I don't teach them to be braver than I am at a younger age.
Mhm.
They will not have the opportunity to live. I am here. I am 37, full of I should haves, full of I could haves, full of I would haves.
Mhm.
And all of these things I blame on my passive behavior. And, the courts will say, well, if it's not a straight no, then it's not a no, then you are guilty for what has happened to you. It is your fault. But I'm here to tell all the listeners that no, you're not. Um, and these rules and these laws, these things are created so that people who are already oppressed continue to be
Yep.
oppressed and continue to not live to change the status quo. And the
Exactly.
few of us, and the reason why they get away with it is the few of us that get up
Mhm.
and say, fuck your status quo,
Mhm.
usually end up being silenced.
Yep.
We know the risk that comes to us. We know the risk that comes to our children. We know the
We've
risk that
already
comes to our
experienced.
families.
We've already experienced.
We've already lived it. Like everyone was like, if you just follow the status quo, you'll be fine. You know what? My parents followed the status
No.
quo. Their child was still fucked over.
Yeah.
Their child was still abused. Their child was still violently disfigured. Their child was still set on fire.
Mhm.
Their child was set on fire. And no one
With
did
anything.
shit. Think
Mhm.
about that. So please, if you want to say like, why don't you just go and be more Muslim? That's
Yeah.
not going to be
No.
enough.
No. No. Nothing is enough.
Nothing she does is going to be enough. Nothing
Nothing.
I do is going to
And
be
I
enough.
knew that. And I
And we
knew that.
might as well just live our lives.
No, but
And
the
at
gall
first I
of
was
this
scared
woman,
too.
the gall of this woman who's sitting there in her freaking white women privilege in a,
Yeah.
government organization to tell me
Yeah.
we are not going to protect you against our people and
Yeah.
go ask for help from your people. Fuck you. Like, seriously, that is disgusting.
Yeah.
I was so horrified after that. I was like, I did not want to speak to her again. And I'm thinking, this is it. This is your protection. You know, this protection is limited to white women. That is it. I don't see it being, and unless you are, you're a bootlicker and you take a white woman with you and she's your babysitter, like what happened with this machete wielding
The
person.
machete woman. Oh God. One day, our listeners, we will talk about the details of the story of the machete experience. The machete experience is, in fact, related to other experiences of discovering a few months ago that we were actually working with a white supremacist in disguise as as
White
a ally. And that is why, to any allies who are listening, take a seat down and step back. Um, because at this point, so many of us have been burned by quote unquote allies that we don't trust you. And you saying for us to trust you, just shut up and sit down. And if you want our trust, you will gain it in time if you are quiet and only
and let us
speak when
speak. Yes,
necessary.
exactly. Stop
We
talking
don't need
over
your nominations of who's going to take care of us. We don't need your allegations of how you can take care of us. You don't know shit. You do not know shit. You may know bullying, you may know many things, but you do not know what it's like to be a living, breathing, walking target
no.
for a bullet. And until you do, you need to shut up and sit down. And when you see someone getting bullied, you need to intervene and say, hey, How can I get you to your people, and how can we get your message across? Your voice is going to tell us how we're going to do this, and you're the one who's going to take action. And I'm here to support you. Be a supporting act. Don't be the main scene. You cannot, there's no Romeo and Juliet here. You cannot be the hero. We
This
don't
is
want a
not
damn
about,
hero. We're
this is not
tired
about,
of white people trying to be our heroes. You
no,
have
but
had generations upon generations upon generations to develop a hero, and you have failed. So now you need to back the fuck off and let the grassroots people of color voices come out. You need to step back and you need to cheer us from the bleachers, even if it's the nosebleed section.
not
Raise
center
your
yourself and make
voices.
it about you. Not
You don't
center
get to come and
yourself
kick the ball.
and make it about you, because it's not about you. You are not the center of the story here, not this particular story. And it's just a lot of it is just not even genuine, honestly. I mean, genuine people I can respect when they make mistakes, but when you are basically picking and choosing which cause to support, and you're doing it for strategic purposes, no, you're not even a savior. You're just an opportunist.
If you
And
don't support all causes, then you're a
you're
fake.
yeah, you're just a fake,
You're a
basically.
fake. You're literally a fake. If you don't
So
support every single cause and every single story of abuse out there, then you are a fake.
that's my
And you just
issue.
need to sit down. And either way, you need to sit down. This is not your time. And I
Yeah,
know we're kind of like babbling, going back and forth from different topics, but like
yeah,
in the run of a day,
yeah. In the
the
run of a day,
amount of information and decisions we have to make as and consciously as people of color,
consciously,
and the
exactly.
amount of unwanted
Hate.
attention,
Yeah.
hate or love that we get, like, or apologies. My biggest thing, and I said this in one of my monologues, don't give me your apologies. Your
I
apologies
don't need, yeah, you don't need a,
don't mean
they mean
shit to
nothing.
me.
They mean nothing.
Don't get sad, get angry. Do
Do
something
something.
about it.
Yeah, do something.
Like,
What are we gonna
do
do with politics?
something about it. Like, when our, like, I always go back to this business fraud thing because, a white business person can relate to me when I talk about this business fraud thing. Nobody, nobody stood beside us in the front and center and pushed us forward and was like, listen to them. They were, victims of this. There were people in this, there were people watching us on TV, cheering us on. There were social media people cheering us on. There was no one on the bleachers willing to show their face, being like, we're cheering you on. Nobody did it. Nobody. Nobody was behind us. Nobody was beside us. I sure as fuck don't want anybody in front of us because they're usually a deflection of the whole thing. Um, and the reason why I use this business fraud thing is it can happen to you. We are all disposable, unfortunately, until we get the message
Completely disposable.
that
And our
we
children
are
are disposable.
either together
Yeah.
or we're nothing.
Or we all die together, honestly,
Yeah.
because genocide has happened once. We have proof, and it can happen again. It's not, the feeling hasn't gone away. You just need to go on these awful forums and listen to these awful people all saying we need to get this rid of this problem, and you're thinking this is the same thinking that caused the first genocide, and it hasn't gone away, and there's still some people who are very, very angry, who are very, very entitled and think nobody else should be here. So stop fighting each other and start working together.
You know,
We get nothing done if we're fighting each other and competing over who's more oppressed. We're all oppressed. Everyone is oppressed. And unless you're a bootlicker, it doesn't matter how white passing you are also oppressed.
in Rwanda, I believe the Rwanda genocide started because of a financial crisis, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and I could be wrong. My memory, I mean, there are so many genocides that start due to financial issues,
Even that,
including this one here
including,
that we are seeing today, because we feel that there isn't enough to share when there is. And the person at the top is usually the biggest thief of all. But when you talk about Rwanda, I'm thinking back to what Natasha said, be more secular, just
Bullshit.
disown your religion, or be
Exactly.
more religious and be more conservative.
Yeah.
You know
Pick a
what? The
camp.
people who tried to balance the scale in Rwanda, let's say the interracial marriages,
Yeah.
okay? They can't balance the scale because
No.
they may be Hutu, but they married a Tutsi
Yeah.
and their children are Tutsi.
Yeah.
And here's the choice that they had. Okay. When you say to someone, you can become more religious or you can disown your religion,
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be
they're
one.
saying to that Hutu that married the Tutsi, you can kill your wife and kids who are Tutsi, or we will kill all of you together.
Exactly.
So you're asking us to dismantle our personal identity
No, and disengage from everyone you
or
know.
dismantle everything and
Exactly.
everyone we know.
Yeah.
And this is what you're saying when you say, well, why don't you just put
No.
a scarf on your head, or why don't
Oh
you just
my
disown your
God.
religion? First off, it's none of your damn business.
No, it's disgusting.
It's none of your damn business. I
How
don't
can
go
you
around
do
asking you which
that?
version of Christian worshiping you're doing. I don't go
Exactly.
around ask you, to become more or less of a Jehovah Witness or more or less of a Catholic, or I don't ask you to do those things.
Mm.
How dare you ask somebody
How
else
dare
to do
you?
those
That's
things?
what I'm saying. How dare you ask that
Like,
question?
that is so offensive. You might as well start asking me how to, or I might as well show you my crotch and you tell me what improvements I should do to it. Seriously.
What they're saying is we only protect white Christian people. If you are not
Which you will
both
never
those
be.
categories, yeah, if you're not both those categories, then you are not worthy of our protection. Go get protection from your own people.
And
That's
you're
what you're
actually good Christian white people. Okay. Okay. Please take the frickin' sentence out of your life that says, oh, but they must be good people. They're churchgoers. Please suck an egg. That
I
makes
don't
me
even know if
so
they're
mad.
churchgoers.
I
I don't
don't
even
care if
know if
they're
they're,
churchgoers. If they have a Confederate flag on their car
yeah.
and they're good churchgoers, I don't give a shit. I don't give a
You can be
damn. They're
no, you
racist good churchgoers.
they're no, they're weaponizing religion. A lot of white supremacists are not practicing Christians, and I would say if you are a practicing Christian and you believe in the message of Jesus, you are not going to tell people all of you can die and only we deserve to live. That is not the message of Jesus. So I don't believe that this is coming from their Christian identity. This is coming from their white supremacist psychosis that makes them think that they deserve to rule the world and everybody else should either die or be their slave. This needs to stop. This is disgraceful. I'm so stunned that this is happening in this century. How is this happening? I can't even believe it. It's just I
And
don't know.
dear white people, a brown man brought you your religion. Um, sorry, like you want to be that ignorant.
Yeah, no.
This was Middle Eastern, like please shove it.
Mm.
And it's like Temmie said, if you really were a true Christian, you wouldn't even be in the
You
church.
would not
Um,
you would not even
so
be who you are. Like it's
you
just
know, I'm gonna bring it down to closing points. Natasha,
mhm.
I mean, we've talked quite a few long and far points today. We've
Yeah.
been all over the page. Um, what's going on in your head? What are
Well,
you
I think the
thinking?
same thing that I've been saying all along that this is a deception. Like I find this conversation about we don't like them because they don't want to assimilate all this garbage. That is bullshit. No, you do not want them assimilating. You do not. No, I don't believe it. I've nothing I've seen shows me that anyone wants Muslims to assimilate or integrate. They want them to completely deny their identity, or they're not welcome and
It's
they
still
should
not
leave,
enough.
or they should leave or they should die. Seriously, there is no other. You stay here and you refuse to deny your identity, you are at risk for death.
Honestly,
Or you should leave. There is literally no other two ways about it. And as long as within the Muslim community, everybody's fighting over who deserves more protection because you only deserve it because you're Orthodox or you only deserve it because you're veiled. No, either we are together and we take this thing on because nobody deserves to be killed for their identity. That's disgusting. How can you say that? And I mean, and what business is it of anybody what these women are wearing? Like, I don't understand what that has to do with anybody. It's no one's
And
business.
I have heard this from more than one person. I've recently had a conversation where someone said, like, I removed my veil because I was getting harassed because of my veil. And when I removed my veil, I started to get harassed because I'm an exotic sexual object.
No,
So
nobody.
the harassment is there. It doesn't matter whether you're veiled
No,
or not.
no, and
You
don't
know,
fool
you're
yourself.
still an object of the entertainment of the person. Like they said it. They're like, I don't know which one was worse. And you know,
I would
I've
say as a
interviewed
visible
Sally on my
woman,
Sally Davis show.
you would
Um,
still be you would still be harassed in some way as a visible minority woman. So,
Well,
uh,
exactly. You still an object of their inclusion, of how they want to include you in their society and how they deem you fit to their agenda. Like the number of Muslim women who don't appear to be Muslim,
yeah,
but face sexual harassment because they are simply exotic, quote unquote, exotic looking women. I mean, not Muslim, but Nikki was on our show. She is half Indian. She was, you know, the quote unquote exotic looking woman. On the Sally Davis show, I interviewed Hillary. Hillary is half Senegalese. She was, you know,
I think
harassed as an exotic woman.
that's fetishization, and I think
Yep.
it's very common with East Asians actually because they have this appeal. I don't know. Apparently, according to what they say, that they
No,
are
it's not
mild.
common to
So
it's no, you're making, see, this is what I mean. We
this is what
think
they
it's because of the Asians,
no.
right? Or we're saying it's very common with Asians,
That's what they complain
but it's
about.
not very common with Asians. It's very common with perverted white men.
Okay, yeah, right.
It's very common with perverted white men to
Who like
think women
right?
are
Who like
their objects.
yeah, right.
And you know, with the history of colonialization and slavery, that these women's are their concubines.
There was no slavery in East Asia. We're talking China, Korea, Japan. There was no
There were
slavery
concubines.
for white men.
There were, oh, phew.
I thought it was for their own men.
There were for their own men, but it's still like, it's
I
still a
don't know.
fetish. It's still, I can't even say that word.
Yeah,
Fetishization. I can't, that's the,
fetishization.
can't say that word. For
But
those of you listening, I cannot say that word for the
it's
life
a
of
hard
me.
word. But I mean, the point is, it's never enough. And it doesn't matter if you're secular, it doesn't matter if you're orthodox, for their own reasons, for covering up the fact that they have such a large culture of far right people who hate people who are not acceptable to them. They will focus on the hijab, they will focus on the beard wearing man coming out of the mosque. That those are not the only people being targeted.
That's what I
you were,
mean.
you were seven
It's
years
because they're
old,
dirty old men.
and it's no, they target anyone because they see this
They're
as,
nasty white supremacists.
I think the problem, and they've made it all about, oh, these are from terrorist countries. No, bullshit. No, the reason is they refuse to let go of their identity. They refuse to say, I am ashamed of who I am, I hate my identity, I want to be you. They're not
If they
saying
said that, it wouldn't be enough.
no, but that's where the hatred, the pure hatred comes from. Then it would be condescension because I've seen other minorities like, Filipinos or Indians, and they will be very sort of accommodating and respectful. And with them, they get the poodle treatment. The favorite pet who, you're willing
Yeah.
to, you know what I mean? It's not the pure hatred, it's the okay, you can be my pet. And that's still no respect. I still don't
Mm,
see the respect there, but it's better than people trying to kill you. So I guess you have to pick and choose.
to pick your battles.
So
Oh, at this point, I'd rather be killed. Not that I want to
at
be
this
killed. I'm
point,
very happy alive. I
yeah,
love
I'm
my
happy alive
children.
too, but couldn't
And
be.
to our listeners, like, I love my children. I am okay with my life. I'm not going to say I love my life. I have a lot to work on in terms of healing and recovery and moving forward.
Mhm.
But I want to love my life.
Yeah.
You know, I want to love my life. I want to be able to see my kids grow up. I want to be able to hold my grandchildren. I want to be able to be at my children's wedding. I want to be able to pick a flower with my child and not have a flashback. I want to be able to see someone light a match and not freak out. I want these things. Um, and they're all things that I think you may be taking for granted.
Yeah.
Um,
Because we,
Nothing woke me up about how much I took for granted until I was crippled and disabled by PTSD. And I hate it. I hate every part of it. I hate who I've become. I hate where my life has taken me. I hate how it has incapacitated an educated, intelligent, independent, able woman. Um, and it's for any of our listeners, this may sound like one big rant, fight, complaining fest, but really it's a scream for solidarity.
yeah,
Um,
it is.
it's a wake-up call. And in a way, it's a cry for help, because you know what? Once they eradicate us,
Yeah,
they're going to start turning on other people.
yeah,
And there's going to be no visible minorities left. So what's stopping it from being you?
yes,
Um,
yeah,
we are normal people,
yeah,
and we want to be happy people. And we feel, and we have similar goals. And we have our privacy. We value our privacy. It's time that we are supported. It's time that speaking the truth is supported. And it's a time for people to stop giving stickers to bigoted white people who commit crimes and keep putting the focus on the reason why there are biased opinions against the victims.
mm-hmm.
The reason why there are biased opinions against victims is because the fucktard who did the crime is a bigoted piece of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the only kind of bigotry that I will allow, is that if you call them a bigot and you call them out and you protect other people from them, that is the only kind of bigotry that's acceptable. And I'm sorry, you don't kill evil with kindness. And I'm not saying kill them, but I am saying, hey, legal system,
Do your
stop the
job.
bullshit.
Do your job.
Hey, journalists,
Do your
open
job.
your eyes and be honest about what the actual problem is.
Oh,
They
they
are
know.
doing their job.
No, they know their
They are
problem.
doing their job.
They know. They know
Their job is to
exactly.
lie.
I have had the
Change your
stupid
job description.
given to me by journalists. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your ending, but
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have the authorization to talk about something so complicated as hate crimes. I can report on housing problems. So who is going to report about this? Well, I don't know. I don't know if we have the capacity to do that. So, I mean, stupid bullshit, mindless
Can
explanation.
you speak English? Can you
Like,
write an article? I
you
think
shouldn't
you're of the
even be
capacity that you can write an article on it.
shouldn't even be a journalist. There is no journalism in New
There is
Brunswick.
no
It
real
is
journalism
horrible.
anywhere,
Horrible.
Natasha. If it's not independent, then it's not real journalism. And this is a universal thing. Journalism is the most dangerous career choice. Maybe second to being a drug mule. And
Yeah, but then you
and
find numbers.
you
You find
know,
numbers and you get more people involved. The solution is not, I know that there's a criminal act being committed or has been committed or going to be committed, and I'm going to pretend I don't know. The solution is to get more people involved. And if you are a white person, you have huge fucking networks. You can find those people. We don't have those networks,
and
but
stop
you
being
do.
embarrassed to come
It is
forward
your
and say it out
responsibility.
loud
No, it's your
and
responsibility. I'm
start
sorry.
shaming people for not
Yes.
being
It is,
open about
it is
it.
not the responsibility of the racialized immigrant minorities to be calling attention to this stuff. If you are white and you have your networks, it is your responsibility, and you have failed people. and you have failed vulnerable people. And I am so, so tired of the excuses and explanations. They're really definitely.
I'm going to close with this one request, and it's that if you are a person of color and you listen to this, I want you to share it with everybody you know, including white people. And if you are white people who are listening to this, I want you to share this with everybody you know, period.
Mm-hmm.
Because your support in silence is not support. We don't hear you. We don't give a shit if you want to support
Yeah.
us in secret. See,
Silently sympathetic. No, no, not good enough.
you have to, this is it. There's no gray. It's white or black. You either support the cause or you don't support the cause. There's no quiet passive help. I have dropped that shit. So far gone. I don't acknowledge it. So and the reason why I'm saying to share, it's not to gain our popularity, it's to give a voice.
Yeah.
Because so many people contact us and they say,
We don't have a voice.
you gave us a voice. Thank you. And many of those people are afraid. And I'm not going to say that we are fearless, but I guess what we're afraid of is not as dangerous as what we are no longer afraid of, because we've already lived it.
We've already lived it. Yeah.
And on that note, like, I'm going to close with the same thing. Be kind to each other, support one another, but most of all, doing those two things won't matter if you cannot stand up for each other. Thank you so much for tuning into another We Can Fight Like Cats If We Have to episode.
Mm-hmm.
You can like and subscribe our channel. You can like our page on Spotify. And if you want to reach out to us, We Can Fight Like Cats, acronym WCFLC NB@gmail.com is our email. We Can Fight Like Cats NB, WCFLCNB@gmail.com. Or you can like our page on Facebook and DM us there. Be safe, be kind to each other, support one another, and stand up for each other. Have a good day.